Our next guest called it a dark day for America when the Supreme Court upheld the president's health care law. But now he says there's a silver lining. So what is it? Here to tell us is Virginia Attorney General Ken Cuccinelli. Good to see you, Mr. Attorney General.
Good morning.
What is the silver lining of the Supreme Court's decision that the mandate lives on as a tax?
Yeah, obviously this was a bad loss on Thursday, but the way that Chief Justice did it by blowing the doors off the tax power, I mean, he expanded it extraordinarily, which was a shock to everybody. Nobody expected this particular outcome. No judge anywhere in the federal system had done anything like this. He stands pretty much alone, and I think that speaks to, frankly, what a bad decision it is. But the silver lining is that because it's a tax bill now, and that from the Supreme Court, instead of an ordinary bill, it can be repealed with only 50 senators instead of 60. You know, normally you got to overcome that Senate filibuster, but now if you've got 50 and a vice president, it can be beaten. And Mitt Romney's been talking a lot about repealing the bill, and that's great for the president. You need someone in the presidency who's willing to do that, but you still got to get him a bill. And that's always been a very tall order in any of the ordinary scenarios we thought of in which we might lose. But the way the Chief Justice did this, we only need 50 senators, and right now the Republicans have 47. And when I listen to people like Claire McCaskill and Senator Manchin, two Democrats, I suspect there are some Democrats who might vote with Republicans to repeal now anyway. So this makes it very much within reach, and it makes November matter even more, because that's how we can beat it. That's one silver lining. The other two are he actually limited the spending power of the federal government for the first time since the New Deal. That's never happened before. That's a real benefit to the states. In referring to the Commerce Clause portion, is that what you're referring to there? No, that's the other silver lining, is they also restrained the Commerce Clause, again, putting an outer limit on it for the first time since the New Deal. If only those two things had happened, this would have been a historic victory. But then he went on to uphold most of the law using the taxing power. So it was a mixed result. Obviously, we wanted to see this law go on Thursday, but there are a couple of items for us to look at, and their hope springs eternal. We can now knock this law out at the ballot box in November. The 50+1 you're referring to, of course, is the reconciliation process. Yeah, right. You're right. You have to get the Senate, and you have to get a Republican president. I'm curious your opinion on how this will work going forward in terms of the Medicaid expansion. As you alluded to a bit there, states do not have to expand their Medicaid rolls because the government cannot punish them. Will governors like yours, Bob McDonnell, like Chris Christie, like Nikki Haley, will they elect to not expand their Medicaid rolls and throw those people back on the government rolls, in your opinion? Should they? Well, we're talking extensively to our governor, and we're going to have a conference call with all 140 of our legislators in about after the 4th of July week to discuss that very question. And that, of course, is in their hands. But as somebody who's running for governor in Virginia, not this year but next, I sure don't want to see us absorb an additional $200 million burden of expanding Medicaid so massively. But you did point out, and part of the spending power limitation of the Chief Justice and 6 others, this was a 7-2 vote, was that they couldn't threaten our other $3 billion worth of federal funding for Medicaid to provide health care for the poor, to hold that over our head, to force us effectively into this new Medicaid expansion. So and lastly, I hope we don't, and I think it's unlikely in Virginia. Lastly, I want to mention, you talked about the repeal option that Mitt Romney is clearly campaigning on. Do you feel he should find and discuss a replacement option, how the Republicans would counter with their own plan should they get that done? Absolutely. You can't just be about saying no. You've got to have positive alternatives. This has been a bipartisan failure for 10 years. But when you say replace, you're speaking in the singular. I think the way we need to do this is we don't need another 2,000-page bill. We need a whole bunch of 10-page bills that every American can read and understand. For instance, let's have one bill to deal with purchasing health insurance across state lines. Right now, most people don't know it's illegal for a Virginian to buy North Carolina health insurance. That's silly, and it unbelievably reduces competition and balkanizes the market. Mitt Romney's talking about doing that. That should be one bill, and then move on to whatever they can do for medical malpractice reform at the federal level. That should be another separate bill. Don't roll them all in. That's one of the mistakes that was made here. It makes for some of the ugliest legislation you can imagine, and Obamacare is a great example of some of the ugliest legislation you could imagine.
Should be interesting to find out if Mitt Romney follows your advice there. Good stuff. Ken Cuccinelli, the Attorney General from Virginia. We appreciate
Good to be
you
with
being
you
on.
all.
Thank you.